This podcast is dedicated to the celebration and preservation of the working Australian Shepherd. Your Aussie is descended from a proud and amazing lineage of hard-working ranch dogs, identified and cultivated primarily in the Wild West. Contrary to the breed name, the Australian Shepherd is actually an American breed success story. Only in America can a blue-eyed, scruffy dog rise from the dust of the American ranch to become one of the most popular breeds in the world today. The Aussies' beauty, brains, and incredible work ethic and almost empathic connection with their human charges make them unforgettable and pivotal members of the family. My goal is to help you understand this amazing breed, learn more about their heritage and their physical and mental needs so that together we can preserve the working Aussie by encouraging better breeding and better vetting of future Aussie owners, ultimately keeping Aussies with their families and out of shelters. Welcome to the Instinctive Australian Shepherd. Australian Shepherd podcast. I am your host, Jacque Tinker. My guest today is Jan Wyatt-Owens, and Jan has a really exciting life, and we're going to talk to her about that. Her and her family raise bulls for rodeos, and she's also involved with Australian Shepherds. So welcome to the podcast, Jan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's start with Australian Shepherds. How and how'd you get into the breed? What do you like about it? And why do you keep getting Aussies? Because I know you put down a deposit on another Aussie.
Yes, I married into him in 1981. I moved up on a ranch in northeastern Colorado. Actually, our address was Kimball, Nebraska. That was the closest town to us. We were 30 miles from Kimball.
Wow.
And we had a little over eight sections. It's about 5,400 acres and just ran commercial cattle. And that was my future husband at the time. I moved up on his ranch, and I guess it was kind of a trial run. And anyway, moved up there in the spring. And in that fall, we got married, and then he went to his first national finals rodeo in the bull riding. He had a blue Merle Aussie named Buster, who wasn't registered, but had come off of a big ranch up there that had been using them for years, probably 20, 30, 40 years. I don't know. And this might have been the smartest dog I've ever been around in my life. He did everything. He did everything on the ranch that it would take probably 2 or 3 dogs to do. But he was gritty. Like if bulls were fighting, he would run in and, break them up and grab them by the nose and they would fling him up in the air, and he'd land and go right back to them. But if there was baby calves, he'd lay by him under a heat lamp and lick on them all night. He died when he was 13 years old. And we had a pup by him, and but they weren't registered, and I wanted to get some registered dogs. So I bought 2 dogs from an Indian lady around Nacona, Texas, and they were fabulous dogs. They were really good. And Harley was the first dog that I ever trialed, and I took her over to the Hearts, and neither one of us had any training at all. We just walked in blind. But I used her every day. So, I opened the gate, I sent her in, and she got him, and we went through the trial. And after 2 days, I had a dog with her start at titles. But at the same time, I had bought a dog, or I'd got a dog from a man in Oklahoma, and that dog would never really hook up because he used a collar on him a lot, and I think he just pretty much had taken all the drive out of him. So when I took him back, they said, well, you can pick out another dog. And I said, well, that dog there's really pretty. And they laughed. They said, oh, well, he doesn't work. He's a show dog. I said, well, I still like him. I like to get him out of that kennel. And anyway, so they gave me that dog, and I came home and I called Carol Ann Hartnagel. So her and my husband went to school together in Colorado, and they were good friends. And I said, I have this dog here, and this is his name. And she started laughing. She goes, I have this dog's full sister, and she is a champion. And I said, well, I'll be in Colorado next week at a rodeo, and she said, bring the dog because we have some shows up here. And I brought that dog up here, and that week that dog finished and was a champion. So here I am now, knowing nothing about show dogs. I have this champion show dog by way of trying to find a good working dog. Anyway, so that got me in the confirmation ring as well. But my first love was always just good using dogs that you could use on the ranch, because we always had lived on a ranch, But so that was I got that dog. I was first on that dog in 1981, and I've never gone a day without an Aussie since then. And I've had a lot of good ones, but I'd say the best dog. Well, let me back up. So I went to a trial in Baton Rouge that Terry Martin and Steve Wynn put on. It was like a fraternity type thing. And when I was down there, it was the first time I ever saw a hanging tree dude, and I'd never seen a dog like this in my life. I could not believe the stuff he was doing. And my husband and I both came home. We said, we got to have one of those puppies, And so somebody told me Betty Williams had some pups, and they were out of a daughter of dude and by Crown Point Red Baron. And Dana McKenzie was up there at her place judging that weekend, and I had paid for the pup, and I said, pick me out a pup and bring it home. And so she called me about halfway, and she goes, you've got to get this pup. He won't quit barking. He was just, like, he wanted to be in her lap, wanted to be attention. And she brought him home to me, and that dog was phenomenal. And his name was Stingray, and I did a lot of cool stuff with him. But I think I trialed him. I think I might have got a starter title on him. But the trial arena is so much different than a using farm and ranch dog, And but at the same time, so now let me back up too. So this champion I bred him to another champion. So now I've got these show dogs, and so but I would always take Sting with me to the dog shows, and they were short to make a major that day. And they said, would you put Sting in? And I said, yeah, I'll put him in. And he was reserve winner's dog. So he, I didn't realize he was that correct,
Yeah.
And so, and I had a bum lamb with me in the trailer, because I always brought like my stock trailer, because I had living quarters, and that's what I would stay in when I go to the dog shows, if I didn't stay at a hotel. But since I had this lamb, I brought the trailer with me. So in the wind picture, I had a wind picture made, and it was Sting and me and this baby lamb in the wind, and he was barely brushed out. I think he might even still had some mud on him,
Yes.
And but anyway, so to this day, I still have some show dogs. I have a champion right now, and she has some pups. But she has a female pup that's really has gotten attached to my husband, and I showed her about a month ago, and she did pretty good. I let my daughter show her in juniors. I'm raising a little girl now, and she's 7, and I let my daughter show her in juniors, and she did wonderful with her. But anyway, she's just completely confirmation bred, and will work like she'll work just. I mean, I would put her up against any trial dog any day. This dog is for real. She's the real deal. And
that happens sometimes.
And I never, yeah. And I've never trained her, but I found out with most of them, I just kind of let them go and just kind of get out of their way and not try to be in such control. I mean, it's like the light bulb comes on. If you just wait on them and give them the opportunity, and especially if there's another, dog around that knows what they're doing, they'll work. You know what I mean? It just, like I said, the light bulb comes on. They go, wow, So that instinct is in there. You just sometimes never give them the opportunity. And you can come out to my house, and there'll be a border collie, there'll be a poodle, there'll be an Aussie, and all of them are working. You know what I mean? Like, not afraid to go in there and I don't care if it's a big bull or a little bull or heifers or whatever. I mean, they'll work, and they save my husband probably 1,000 steps a day. Just having these dogs here.
Oh, I know. I know that, because man, they're such good workers. And that's one of the beauties of the Aussie, that is that a person that doesn't either have doesn't know how to trial, or doesn't care about trialing, or doesn't want to put all that
Mhm.
training on, or doesn't
Mhm.
have the time for training, can take one of these dogs and they're
Uh-huh.
smart enough to figure it out. That
Right.
you show them the job a few times and they're like, I got it. We're good now.
Yeah.
That's the
'Cause
beauty of those dogs.
Yeah. Because they need that job, and I like, like I said, they're such good free thinkers. You know what I mean? They say
Mhm.
a dog can't reason, but these dogs sure do. I mean, they'll figure it out in a hurry. Especially if they felt a little pain one time, they're like that just even if they get kicked or hooked or something, that just like
Mhm.
takes them to a whole nother level. They're ready for it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
um, and I've lost a dog. I've lost two dogs that they got run over. I mean, not by a car, but by a bull.
Mhm.
Um, but that's kind of just part of it. But I've had human friends that have been killed by a bull also. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's just the nature of the beast. This is you know, these things are for real. They're not show cattle.
No.
And no, and we've been right now we probably have about 300 bulls here,
Wow.
and about 300 and about 300 cows, buck and bull cows, right here at this place. And then we have a ranch about 5 miles from here where we have the rest of the cows. And then we have a lease place down the road where we still raise commercial cattle as well.
Wow.
So yeah, so altogether, it's a lot of work. And we're old. We're not young anymore. We're both in our 60s.
Yeah.
We're old, and we don't
Same.
have a hired hand. So I mean, our hired hand, eats dog food. So I mean, that tells you what we use.
Yeah, and
Um,
more
yeah,
people are killed by cows each year than are attacked by
yeah,
sharks. So people are really afraid of
yeah,
sharks, and they're like, I'm not going to go in the water because there's a shark.
yeah,
But more people are killed by cattle every year than they are killed by
yeah.
sharks. I think even
And
possible.
especially
There are
like,
lots of others, but cattle can be very
yeah,
dangerous, and they can be dangerous without, of course, there's ones that are dangerous because they want to be, but oftentimes, they don't know their own strength, and they can just or
no,
do something they wouldn't hurt each other but could kill a person. So
hmm
they're not
right.
anything to
And it's
be
the most,
messed with.
yeah. And a lot of times it's the gentle cattle because like these, okay, so like these bucking cattle, they want to get out of your way. You know what I mean? They want to pretty much they'll handle really good. You know what I mean? They're just they don't want to be in your space and they don't want you in their space either. But like you talking about, there's more dairy farmers killed by their dairy bulls or dairy cows that are
Hmm.
so gentle. Because they just, like you said, lack of respect for humans and doesn't know their own strength. Um,
Yeah, and
but for
sometimes
the
the more
most part,
gentle ones, yeah, they don't know their own strength, and
yes,
then sometimes you get complacent because they're so gentle. You're like,
yes,
hey, just walking around and something spooks them, or
uh-huh,
something just the wind blows the wrong way, and they're not gentle anymore. They're
hmm,
scared, and then you get hurt. So
yeah,
it is cattle they're big, they're beasts that are
uh-huh.
large, and they have to be respected.
Yeah, and there's times when like the dogs will save my husband too. I mean, they'll run
Hmm.
him. Something will get him up on the fence. And he'll stay there and hook at his feet and can't get him off. But he can call one of the dogs in, and like I said, they'll run in
Yep.
and grab him by the ear, grab him by the nose, grab him by the tail, and you know, and he'll spin around and try to get the dogs. Give my husband time to get down.
Yes.
Or get on the other side. But yeah, they've literally have saved our butts. Saved our life
Hmm.
actually a few
Yeah.
times.
That is
And
an awesome story. That they are awesome.
yeah,
So tell me, let's talk a little bit about, and we can, mix dogs in with this too, but I'm kind of curious about the whole
uh-huh,
raising rodeo bulls. So each,
okay,
you raise a bull, and the average person who's not involved in rodeo doesn't understand how it works as far as, don't they get their own ratings and their own, like the
yeah.
bulls have their
So
own
so like
scores?
yeah, and it's a registration. I mean, every single uh, cow, heifer, whatever we have, they're all registered. They're all registered by the American Buck and Bull Incorporated, and that started in 2020 is when that started,
Hmm.
and it just really took off. And everything has to be DNA'd. and everything has to have an EID tag, which is it's an electronic identification tag, and it goes in their ear, because it's so easy. Like it would be so easy to cheat, because the prize money has gotten pretty good,
Crazy.
and so crazy good, and so you register a black bull, and then you take another black bull in its place, and that could be easily done, but they have to have that identification tag in their ear, so you couldn't do that, right? And but anyway, everything's registered when they're born, and we start bucking them when they're yearlings, and now we even have a yearling competition, and you can buck yearling bulls throughout the year, or there is a maiden event, and it pays $100,000 to win the maiden event, and that will be in Las Vegas in the fall. And so we have to hold these calves back that's going to the maiden event. We can't buck them anywhere for money or for a score. We can take them and do exhibitions with them. And just like horses, if anybody's, in the horse business, they've got to learn the whole thing of riding in a trailer and going and drinking. You see, we're in a ranch, so we're all well, or they drink out of the river, out of a pond, and then you take them into town. They smell that chlorine. Well, they won't drink water the whole time they're gone from the house, So they've got to be exposed to all that kind of stuff. There's a lot more to it. So you can start bucking them as yearlings, and then usually the really big money starts at their 2-year-old year. We have the American Heritage Fraternity, and it pays around $150,000 to win that, $150,000. And then throughout the year, there's big other fraternities that, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to win it. And then we go every weekend, and those are, anywhere from like $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000 to win first at those, and that's what pays the bills. And
so this is the part about rodeos that people don't understand, because people watch the rodeo and they see the bronc rider, the bull riders, the guys on the cows riding the bulls, and those guys are competing for money. But on the back side of it, also the bulls are competing for money.
Yeah. Right. Well, now the regular rodeo, they're not, but at like PBR that you watch on TV, usually like about once a month it's called, by the time they're 4 years old, that's their classic year, and they will usually on Friday night or Saturday night, the classic bulls will be there, and those bulls, like you said, are also competing for prize money as well, and they're being scored. And so it's accumulation of points. So like, you want to be at least 90 or 90 or better than 90 points, every time, to at least be up in the top 10. And so that's where like the points, like you said, come from, and that's where the money is. Now in the they change it every so often. This year, like it's money won in like the yearlings and the 2-year-olds, and so you've got to have the, like you've got to have the highest money winning bull, and all the way down to about 30 place, to be able to compete in Las Vegas, and that's what we're all striving for, is to be able to compete at the end of the year in Las Vegas. It's the American Buck and Bull and Corporate Finals. Now they moved the PBR finals to Fort Worth, and that'll be next month, and that'll just be for the riders, except our classic bulls will buck there twice during that time, and it'll usually be the first night and the Saturday night before the final go round, and those bulls will be like ones that are competing for points as well and money. We have one right now. He doesn't have a name. It's just 902. It'll say Moline and Owens, and he'll be bucking there. And these are the ones that'll be on TV. And then after they're done with their classic year, they age out. So we call the age out of the like the fraternity system, out of the the aged events. And that's when you sell these bulls to like rodeo stock contractors, or usually Chad Berger buys most of our bulls. Every weekend we watch a PBR, there's at least one or two of our bulls competing that a PBR stock contractor, has bought. And we've had some really bulls that gone on to be pretty famous. And they're being hauled by PBR stock contractors. And so we could do that as well, and we have before. We've hauled as many 10, 12 bulls to a PBR, but really the money's not as good as it is with hauling these young bulls. That's where the real money is, and that's how we make our living.
And I'm guessing they put this together. My theory is, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, they started making it competitive for bulls to keep the competition high, so that they're not just getting easy riding bulls or whatever.
Well,
they're trying to keep the competition for the bull riders high.
Exactly. But now we've got to the point where we've almost created too much. Our bulls are too. It's almost nearly impossible to get somebody. We used to be able to pay some guys to come and get on our bulls, because we do have to buck them with riders, before we take them to an event. And even at the lower tier levels of the PBR, we've gotten to where we've bred these bulls so much and have got it down, by such almost to a science, that we are raising ranker bulls than we are. It's easier to raise a rank bull than it is to raise a rank bull rider. You know what I mean? And because I've tried it, I have a son too, and I'm telling you, it's hard. It's really hard. But these bulls have almost got to where they've become too ranked, and it's, you'll see on the weekend, you'll watch a whole performance of a PBR and they haven't rode any bulls, and so we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot there, because people want to see a good ride,
Yeah.
And so now what they've done, they've backed off and they've created these bull teams, and they call them rider friendly bulls. And you want a bull that's only going to be in the low 80s, or maybe at the most 86, 87 points. And then what they'll do is they'll take your bull score, and if the rider bucked off, they'll take his time and they'll still score the bull. So say they scored the bull, 88 points, and then the rider rode 4 seconds, that bull score is going to be 92 points. And then you'll have 3 bulls on a team, and, the 3 bulls with the highest scores, cumulative scores, will win the bull team. And then that is a way to get these guys that aren't really ready for the really ranked bulls to still be able to compete in the PBR, and and then we'll still have a place to go with our 21 and 22 point bulls. Because that's another thing too. We had all these good bulls, and what we're going to do with them,
Right.
There's been a lot of good bulls that had their head cut off, had to go to the sale barn because we couldn't get any outs on them, So that was kind of hard to fix that deal. But this is kind of working now, these lower tier bulls and for these lower tier riders,
Right. Well, it's hard on a human body to ride bulls. Bull riders don't usually ride really well into, they're not old. And then when they do get old, not even that old, in their 40s and 50s, their bodies pay for the price for riding bulls. So when you talk about ranked bulls, you've got hundreds of bulls hanging around your place. Is it the worse or the more rank the ride? Is that also match up with the rank personality, or have you been able to get decent personalities and then they just know the job?
Right. And that just comes, like I said, with miles, with just a lot of miles, them sniffing a lot of diesel smoke, you know what I mean? Because that's just how you want to still, and that's a fine line, because you still want to keep that edge to them. You don't want them too gentle, but at the same time, you want them to handle good. Right. And you want, and you want them to stay fit, and so it's a really fine line to get them to peak at, at 3 years old, at 4 years old, and it's really hard because they can get stale real easy, and you want to keep that fire in them. At the same time, you want them to, just like kids, you want to be able to take them out in public and they have good manners, and you want to be able to take
killed
bulls.
by them.
No, you don't want to be known as, oh God, here comes, Dennis and Jan Owens. Watch out, their bulls are,
dangerous.
They're exactly. Well, I mean, you want to be known as a guy that has the ranked bulls, but still has bulls that have some manners and can handle well. that just takes a lot of time with them, like I said, a lot of miles in the truck, a lot of different fairgrounds, a lot of different coliseums, they'll have to be, sometimes they're on concrete getting to their pens, like the bulls at Madison Square Garden, that where they buck bulls is like, it's like, I think on the 4th story up, but they're being loaded at ground level, and that's concrete all the way up to where they're, and you don't want one of those to turn back on you and get on the fight, halfway up there, taking up that concrete, because your horse could slip or whatever, So it's, there's a lot more to it. And our bulls that, our best bulls, they still got that fire. You still have to be careful with them, but at the same time, they know the routine. They know how to handle. They know when, they see that open gate, they know they better find it and get in there, And the last couple of years, we've been hauling so much that my husband and I have to split up, and I have to go one direction with a set of bulls, and he has to go one direction with a set of bulls, and and I'm 63 years old, so I can't, I'm not like young. I've got to be able to handle these bulls, and they have to go for me, right? And I'll have to be able to go in the pen and feed them and not worry about getting hooked. But you never ever can take your eye off them. You never can trust them, because as soon as you do, that's when one will get you down. Even if it could be the most gentle bull you own, for whatever reason, they're just, you've got to be able to, you have to, you have to just keep your eye on them all the time. Even when I go in that pen with them, sometimes I even take a stick with me, or if I got one that's not really broke yet, a young bull, I'll take one of like those sticks that like you use show cattle with the hook on the end that like they scratch their belly with, I'll take that so I can, get their feed buck, because they'll push, it's always the ones you don't want to go in the pen with. They're the ones that'll have their feed bucket in the middle of the pen, and I can't get to it,
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? So I have to get that to pull the bucket over, or to water them. And, and just loading them, you're going down the alley with them. They can turn back on you, and that's not good, because you're just like, you're so vulnerable, you better be able to get up on the fence quick.
That's and you've got to be able to get away from them, and you've got to, like you said, train them to load in trailers, load in the bucking pens, where they before they release them, and that don't they have like a rope around them so that the rider can hold on to there's something to hold on to. They have to be they have that harness.
They have a bull rope.
Yeah.
They it's just a soft braided rope. It's usually a polyester blend type rope. And then we use a flank rope, and it goes around like where their flanks are, and people think that we're really pulling off, but actually less is more. A lot of times the less you pull on that, you just, if you ever look at a cow or a horse in the pasture, they can feel that fly landing on them. You know what I mean? That tiny fly, they'll switch that tail, right? So that you don't need to put all that pressure. If you put a rubber band around the balloon, that's, you've created a bind. You know what I mean? You don't want that. You want it loose. You want it just to be able to tickle them. You want them to just be able to feel it. And we use, Dennis and I, we use the softest links we can find, because we can find out that irritates them just a little bit more.
Well, and then it's more of a training tool at that point. Like, hey, this is your job now. You've got this on. That means you got to buck around, act like a crazy bull for a while, and then when it's off, you can. It's more of a training tool than anything aversive, really.
Right. And you want that kick. It's so important. You want them to be able to kick. And again, if it was too tight, they wouldn't be able to kick. And so again, it's just finding. And some bulls do need a little more. Some bulls don't need any. In fact, it's been quite a while ago, but we had a bull out in Las Vegas when he was 2 years old and competing at the finals, and he was like in the top 5, and the first jump out, the flank fell off of him, and he went ahead and still continued to buck and won us some money without a flank on. This past weekend, my flank fell off at about 2 seconds, and the bull I was flanking, he continued. You couldn't even tell the difference that the flank was off him. He was bucking just as good without it as he was when he left the chute with it. And so but again, that's just with anything. You've got anything at any level. I don't care if it's a horse or a dog or whatever. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of miles. Just like horse or even like these dogs. They're great at home, but you take them out, it's a whole different deal.
It is.
They spend a night, in a motel and they're in a strange environment. They're not going to be as good as they are at home. And so you got to get them to the point where they do. You have to, because we have these T-shirts made up and it says, well, they bucked at home, meaning like, why did you bring this bull if he's not bucking? Well, he bucked at home, and that's the same thing, right? They do. And you've got to keep them at where it doesn't matter where they're at, under what conditions you want them to be able to perform.
Well, and they're athletes, they're just an animal athlete, just like a racing horse or a, cutting horse or whatever. These bulls are athletes. So they have a really good life and they get spoiled and they eat well, they play a lot, they get to buck around and be monsters and they get to have fun.
And by nature, bulls are lazy. Like you can drive by and you'll see the cows will all be out grazing and the bull will be under a shade tree.
That's right.
He's the laziest creature around, And so what we're asking these bulls to do is something that does not come natural to them. Now, the ones that have been bred for this, they've got so much of this bred in them that, they, you'll see the babies when they're tiny, they're out there kicking and bucking, like bucking like a bucking bull, as opposed to just a calf that just runs and plays, But like I said, but by nature, cattle are lazy. This isn't, you think about the times you've seen a cow run, you don't hardly see it, just because they just don't do it, So, but they do have the best life in the whole world. They get the best feed that we can buy, the best supplements, Each one of them has a feeding program formulated and designed just to fit their needs, and because some will bloat, some will get off feed for whatever reason, and just all, they're very finicky, and their digestive system is really, really finicky. So it's a mind game, really, for sure, with these animals. It really is. But you mentioned about like when I go by myself and haul these bulls, and I always have a dog with me, or usually one or two or three. But in fact, our first trailer we won a trailer in 2014. No, 2011. We won a trailer, a 4-star aluminum trailer. And the first thing I said in the tack compartment, I want an air conditioner. And they're like, well, it won't be big enough, to put living quarters. I said, no, I put an air conditioner for my dogs, And so to this day, we're like, everybody knows why I have an air conditioner on my trailer, which now we have a living quarters in there, but it was always because for the dogs, because I hate keeping them in that hot trailer all the time. But when I do go do an event by myself, I'll have my dogs, and a lot of times, everybody's in a hurry to get home, and they don't even say like, "Hey, Jan, you need some help loading out." But it doesn't matter because like I'll just get my dogs out, and they pretty much do all the work for me, loading these bulls out for me. I just gotta hurry up and run and shut the gate, behind them. The dogs
do you work your?
Go ahead.
Sorry, the bulls when they're younger, do you use your dogs on them from day one so they are used to the dogs being in their lives?
And there's times when I'm like, the border collies are the worst because they want to work all the time, and I mean sometimes when these calves are just a week old, they don't know, but there'll be dogs out in the pasture, and I have to call them off, like, get back up here, you know what I mean? So from the time these babies are born, they're exposed to cattle. They're exposed to dogs, and it's the same thing as from the time my pups are babies, they're exposed to cattle,
Well, you certainly would not take a trailer full of bulls without them being dog broke. Like they know where the dog's job is, and they have come to some sort of agreement before you're taking them all out in public, because otherwise it could be a disaster.
It could be all right. Yeah, it'd be a complete. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, but these cattle have been exposed to dogs from the time they were babies, and vice versa. So could have them grow up together, you know, and when some calves are born, when some puppies are born, you know, and it's funny that they're the same age and they've grown up together.
Yeah.
And their lifespans are pretty similar too, you know.
Right.
And they've grown old together as well. But yeah, I had some great dogs, some really great dogs. You know, that dog I got from Betty Williams he was a phenomenal dog. There's been a lot of people that had wanted to breed to him, you know, but he was an AKC, you know, and they're like, oh shoot, you know, because the customers, you know, especially because he was pretty, you know, and he reminded me so much of your dog that's
Copper.
I reached out. He does.
Well,
reminds me a lot of them in looks.
They're sort of related. Copper is a great grandson of Red Baron. So
Yeah,
they have
I saw
their
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Copper's half of Betty's stuff and half of Marty's stuff, and I
Yeah.
love Betty's dogs. I mean, I love Marty's dogs too, but I love the look of them, the correctness of them, the way that they move, and the intelligence is ridiculous between you know the cross I have between Marty and Betty's dogs. His intelligence and the intelligence he's passed on to his children is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
and that's the one again. As when I can't remember what year it was, but I had this pup, and he was probably 6, 7 months old, and I was up. It was in Colorado. It was in Greeley. We were at Nationals, and I was there with some confirmation dogs, and but I had my bed dog from Betty, and I wanted to go watch Red trial, and so I took him up there, and I took him up to Red, and Red was he was watching every run. He was just like an old man, you know. And I took the dog there, and he's like, get away, pup. You know what I mean? Like, I got business here to look at, you know. And but I wanted to, you know, take him up there and see his dad, you know. And he had a phenomenal one. He might have won cattle that day. I can't remember, but again, he was so hard to beat. But it was so funny because he didn't have time to look at this pup. He didn't have time to talk to me. He was watching. He watched every cattle run before he went. You know, just like a seasoned veteran. And but that was the only time I really got to meet him in person. You know,
I never got to meet Red in person. And Betty said Copper reminded her of the first time she saw him work. She said he reminded her of Red, which made me happy and made me smile.
And that's why I reminded me too, you know. And then you know, after Joni sold Dude, I got to see him quite a few times, you know. But that first time I saw him, that was unbelievable. I've never seen a dog do that, you know. The stuff he was doing. He even went out. He went outside of the arena to get, because they were too close to the fence. He went outside of the arena and got in front of them. I mean, I'm like, what just happened? I can't believe he just did that. You know what I mean?
That was Dude,
smart,
right?
To figure that out. Yes, that was Dude. Yeah. You know, and I don't know if there's any runs on him that are on video, but it'd be people need to see him because he was unbelievable.
Well, and Dude, I was actually just interviewed Jody. It's not Swank anymore. It's Titchen.
I don't know what
she's Jody Titchen, and she's in Border Collies now. But I interviewed her about working dogs, and she talked about Dude being one of her most talented dog that she had in her memory, and she talked about that too. And she'd go to these trials and just wipe the floor with everybody because her dog was just so well trained and so talented. And you know, that dog Dude is in a lot of pedigrees. He was well used and definitely improved. I think improved the working breed. There's just a lot of him around still, which is good.
And
it's
you know,
good good dogs.
I got to be friends with Gary Erickson. So I own I'm a counselor, I'm a therapist, and I owned counseling agencies in Oklahoma. Since I have moved to Oklahoma in 2021, I moved to Oklahoma. But anyway, so to make a long story short, Gary's wife was a counselor also, and she worked for me. And it was such a small world, you know. And when she came, Donna Erickson, I didn't even realize. I just thought her name was Donna Erickson. And then it wasn't just a few seconds that she mentioned her husband Gary, and it clicked on it. Gary Erickson that had dogs, and she said yes. Oh my gosh, So we ended up becoming a really, really good friends. And he owned the original Hanging Tree Dogs,
Mm-hmm.
and and there was always talk of somewhere there was some border collie in there,
Mm-hmm.
and he just grinned when I'd ask him about it. If that was if that was true, he wouldn't tell me, but he would just grin real big. But anyway, if there was, I don't really think it hurt the breed. I think it just kind of upped the ante. It just took working dogs to the next level, and
Yeah.
by for example, like Black Bear and Dude and Blue Bear. I mean, all those dogs were just nothing compared to them. They were just unbelievable. The savvy they had, how smart they were. And
Mm-hmm.
and everybody always kind of shied away from the hanging tree stuff. But I mean, like, it is what it is. But like I said, they couldn't prove it. But like, if it did, and if that really happened, like I said, I just think it really took these dogs to a whole nother level that I think needed it at the time.
It's definitely possible. It's definitely
Uh huh.
possible. I always wanted to try and track him down and kind of interview him,
Uh huh.
just because, and he ended up, just for, this, but for our listeners, and I think I've mentioned this before, that
Mhm.
he started out with Hanging Tree Australian Shepherds was the name of his kennel. So if you go back to
Right.
Hanging Tree Dude, Hanging Tree Black Bear, Hanging Tree Blue Bear, those are
Mhm.
some of the main studs from his kennel. Then he
Mhm.
left Aussies after he wasn't in straight up Aussies for a super long time. He left Aussies
Uh
and
huh.
came up with his own breed called Hanging Tree Cattle
Right.
Dogs. So it's very
Uh huh.
confusing to people when they're talking Aussies versus, and you're somebody that's
Right.
thinking Hanging Tree Dogs, and you can still find to this day the Hanging Tree, quote unquote Hanging Tree Cattle Dogs. And he
Uh huh.
crossed it. Black Bear was an Aussie that he used in that breed, and he put in Border Collies and Kelpies and, I don't know, Catahoulas, or I don't know
Uh huh.
all the combinations
Yeah.
of dogs he
Uh
put
huh.
in there. And to me, it's not a true breed, because they don't breed true, and they all look different. They all work different. Some
No,
work
they're just
upright,
it's
some
a
work like a border collie, some
yeah.
have tails, some
It's a
don't, some are slick haired, some are
mhm.
blue merle, like, there's so much variety in the shapes and sizes that to me, it's not a,
Uh huh.
I don't think he was
No, it's so much
around.
outcrossing that, like you said, and like you said, the outcross comes
Hmm.
true when you notice, like you said, there's no conform, because you can't breed one, you can't breed a slick dog to a long hair dog and get a medium hair dog. You're either gonna get slick dogs or long hair
Yeah,
dogs, so
yeah, it
that's
doesn't
why,
quite work
you know,
that way.
no,
So,
no, you know,
well,
and
and
so,
it's just not been around long enough, and they haven't.
hmm
I don't know, and people may get upset with me about that, but in my opinion, it's fine if you want to have a hang tree dog. I don't have a problem with it. I've seen some nice
right,
ones, so it's not a big deal. To me, it's not really a true breed yet. Maybe it will eventually become that way when you can sort of say, "Oh yeah, that's a hanging tree dog." Because sometimes you go out there and
you
you
can
won't
no,
know. Is it a border collie?
you
Is it an
can't no,
Aussie? Is it a
yes,
what is it?
healthy, yeah, what is
Yeah.
uh-huh,
So, but either
exactly, that's
way,
exactly,
there are a lot of them out there working on ranches and doing good work. And
hmm
you don't always, we
right,
get stuck on the purebred thing a lot. And I truly love Australian Shepherds, and I love them for their
hmm
personalities. If I wanted a border collie, I'd go buy a border collie. If I wanted a
hmm
kelpie, I'd go buy a kelpie. I like because purebred dogs will have specific characteristics that you can normally count on. And I
right,
just happen to really love the Aussie personality. However, you've got the
hmm
Texas Healers, and which are either Aussie cattle dog crosses or cattle dog border collie crosses or something like that. But like, then you'll get 50% of this and 50% of this. And you can even see, and we've talked about this with Jody as well, or Joni, on the
hmm
podcast before, about what happens when you outcross two separate lines of dogs. What happens,
hmm
and how
hmm
that can even show you, you're going to have
yeah,
this characteristics. If they're very separate lines and they're very distinct and they're very unique and they have strength,
hmm
you can look at an Aussie and go, oh, that's one of Betty's dogs. Oh, that's a slash V dog. Oh, that's a
hmm
hanging tree dog. And
hmm
I can do that after years of working these dogs. For the most part, there are some lines, there's probably about 5 or 6 of them that are just pretty obvious. Twin Oaks and
hmm
Windsong, like, oh yeah, I could tell
right,
by looking at this dog.
hmm
Costa, like, you could tell what they are. So, and when you cross those two lines, then you get that whole, you're going to get some of this and some of that and a little bit of mix, but not a lot,
Right.
in my experience. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, that's a
Right.
whole nother conversation. But I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on and talking about your dogs and
Mhm.
bulls, and it's just a really cool. I've wanted to talk to you for a while because I thought, I bet you my audience would love to just talk about bulls and what goes
Yeah.
on behind the
And
scenes
we race
in bull riding.
we race bucking horses too. I
Oh,
didn't
you
even
do?
tell you that.
I didn't even realize that. I always see pictures of the
Yes.
bulls, but I
Yeah, I
guess
don't
I
have
haven't
very
noticed
many.
the horses.
I don't have very many, but there's nothing prettier than a bronc, that's painted up and got that mane down in his face,
Mhm.
and oh my gosh, and they're huge and they're just so majestic. And so I've ducked around at a few of these sales, like used to go to South and Los Lunas, and then there'd be some pretty good sales in Texas, and had bought some pretty good brood mares, and then I was able to buy a really good stud. And so I produced, like, I have 5 or 6 babies a year, but as soon as they're weaned, I've got people in line wanting to buy them. So
Mhm.
I haven't been able to keep them long enough to try to. You can do fraternities with them as well, to keep them long
Wow.
enough to compete with them, but other people are, and that makes me happy. So at least I have a little bit of the doing the bucking horse thing,
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
which one is for the rider who's getting involved, wanting to be like a bull rider or a bronc rider? Which one is more dangerous?
Yeah. Oh, saddle bronc riders, they compete way into their 30s. That's probably. I always wanted my son to ride saddle broncs because he was less likely to get hurt. He would still have a good career up until his 30s. But no, he was a bull rider, and so bull riding is probably the most dangerous. But bareback riding, that's where they just have their hand in a rigging,
Mhm.
and the horses, again, it's just like the bulls, have gotten to be so much more ranked and so strong and big.
Mhm.
That's probably the hardest on their body. That's probably the hardest on their body, just day in and day out. A bull rider, if they make a good ride, they're fine. It's getting off
Yeah.
or getting away from the bull is where the injuries come from. But just sitting up there and riding a bull is not very hard on your body. It's getting bucked off and hung up, or getting bucked off on top of their head or their horns, or getting bucked off and getting stepped on, and it's 1,800 pounds that comes straight down on top of you,
Yeah.
So that's what hurts. But as far as like hard on the body, I'd say is bareback riders,
Wow.
And they're a different breed too. They are, it's just they're a whole different group of guys, and they all, a lot of them spend a lot of time in the gym, and they have to stay strong, whereas bull riding, you want to be strong, but you don't want to be real muscle bound, because you have to have that flexibility and to be able to float with a bull, and have counter moves to what a bull does, so. But all in all, I'd say the most dangerous definitely is bull riding.
Wow.
Definitely.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to come see bulls, I'm in South Central Oklahoma. I'm just 2 hours from Fort Worth, and they're welcome to come out here, and I will give them a tour, and we can buck some bulls for them, and they can see the dogs work. And so
that would
we're
be
just
awesome.
real laid back. Yeah. Anybody's welcome to, and like spend the afternoon, it'd be fine,
Okay.
I'm sitting here in the truck talking to you, and I'm just looking out right now, and I'm just looking out at bulls, just bulls everywhere eating grass, so it's,
I
we
would
can saddle
love
up some
that.
horses.
Yeah.
We could saddle up some horses, and we can go horseback, or I can take you in the pickup, and, there's, yeah, so that anybody's welcome to. Just holler at me and let me know, and I'd be more than happy to show you. And if you want to own a bull, that's easy too. So, and this year when Aska was in trouble, I donated a heifer, and one lady jumped up and bought her, and she's keeping her here, and we're gonna buck her heifer for her when she gets a little older. And I said, your heifer might be good enough to compete, because in their yearling year, heifers now compete right along with the bulls, And so she's real excited, because she got in really cheap at that auction. I don't know what she even paid for her, maybe $300, $400, $500. I can't even remember.
Oh, wow.
But now she's in the buck. Now she's in the, yeah. And I knew that was going to happen, but I didn't care. And And now she's in the buck and bull business. She lives somewhere in South Texas, down by Austin, or maybe down by Austin, I guess. And yeah. So I mean, it worked out. And she's a dog person, but she's excited about owning a bucking heifer.
So somebody could theoretically do that, buy a bull or a heifer from you, and then
oh yeah,
they just you take them on the road and you split expenses and whatever,
exactly,
and winnings and stuff like that. Wow, that's interesting.
There's a lot of people that are partners with like pages or and have gone on and won a lot of money. I mean, like a couple $100,000. It's just like the racehorse deal.
Yep.
There's owners out there that they live in town somewhere, and their horse is just with a trainer, and they've got partners in on this horse, and they just show up at the races and watch their horse run. And the same way with these bulls, they show up at the like at the PBR or like at a fraternity, and which they're scattered all out. They're scattered out all over the United States, but the majority of them are in Oklahoma.
You guys, this is now you want to be part of the rodeo, but you don't want to buck any bulls. You don't want to get on the back of a bull or a bronc. You can get in on the back end of it and co-own or own yourself a bronc or a bull or a heifer or whatever it is.
I didn't mean to come on here and sell this. I just thought,
I think it's a great idea. And I'm glad you did. And I will put your contact information for your ranch up there on the show notes so people can access it. And if y'all are interested in getting involved in the rodeo on a different side of things. And I think that's a great idea. And it's a great way to get involved in cowboy culture when you may or may not, you get to watch PBR, you get to watch the rodeos, and now you can get in on the ground floor and own yourself a partial bull or a partial bronc or a full one.
It's
outstanding.
Yeah. And it's not as crazy, as expensive as you think, And like I said, we've got hundreds of acres right here, and then the big ranch, we have 2,000 acres of rough country, and I can take you. We can go horseback, we can go in the pickup, we can hike, and just show you all of them. And the bucking horses are over there, and so I mean, it's
we may get a field trip we may get a field trip of students together and go on up there. We're going to put a little tour together. Check it out. Well, thank you for coming on.
Nice,
and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I'm just thrilled to be getting my puppy, and
I'm excited too.
I don't even want to tell you how many dogs I have, but they live a great life. They're not even kenneled or anything. They all live in a great life in harmony. And the only problem is they all lined up at the back door wanting to come in. I say, oh no, only two at a time. They all get to come in, but not all at the same time.
That's my rule too. And people ask you how many dogs do you have? I have the dogs that I have. It's none of your business.
I don't even ask.
That's right. Mine don't live in kennels either. I've got a few, and only two are allowed in at a time as well. So but anyway, outstanding.
Hey, and that's the show today. Thanks for joining me. I hope you really enjoyed it and got to learn something about this amazing breed, the Australian Shepherd. Join us on Facebook. We have a private group called the Instinctive Australian Shepherd. Join the group and join the conversation there. You can also find us online at theinstinctiveaussie.com. That's where you'll find all the show notes, the links to anything we talked about this show, and all of our past episodes. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you find your favorite podcasts, and that way you'll be the first ones to know as soon as an episode is uploaded. All right, everyone, I'll see you down the road.